Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, use the hashtag Rising Woman Leaders. Follow me on Instagram at Meredith Ram and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to get all the new and inspiring content. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. Welcome back. This is our first episode of the new year, and we're excited to kick off this new season with an awesome episode with Erin, Rivera, Merriman. But before we dive in, we want to share just some updates with you. I spent the winter going super inward. The last episode we released, I think, was around the winter solstice last December. And since then, I went to India. I went back for 3 weeks to stay at the ashram I wrote about in my book, Just Be. And I allowed myself to go into this winter cocoon of, I was off of all social media, I was off of blogging and podcasting, and I really allowed myself the space to renew. And I'm feeling this energy now coming back of wanting to share, wanting to give, wanting to create new content for all of you. And this is such a lesson in the feminine. The feminine is so cyclical, wanting to go inwards, renew ourselves, and then come back out and expand. So during this time, I've been thinking a lot about the podcast, about my business, what I stand for. So much is emerging and changing in my life and in my work. I started my Saturn return a few months ago. Some of you might be familiar with that time of just, it's a time of maturity, of grounding, of learning new things about yourself, of putting structures in place. So after a period of what felt like things just being the same for a really long time, changes are happening. I'm actually turning 30 just this week. I just moved to a new home. I'm getting married later this year, so a lot of big things have been happening and shifting and moving in my life. But one insight that I had recently about my work and about the Rising Woman Leaders podcast and in general what's happening in our culture is about the feminine rising. And one of the insights that's been really coming to me is no longer doing my work all alone in my office, creating these episodes for you, but this idea of community, this idea of coming together, this idea of collaboration and rising. I have had so many ideas of guests I want to interview and how I would love to grow this podcast. But in the last 6 months to a year, I've literally been feeling so held back by time and resources. And I saw that there's really only so much I can do just on my own. I recently heard this quote from Casey Baker, and it really landed for me. The return of the power of community and connection is the feminine rising. Without it, we suffer, and all becomes unsustainable eventually, even the most passion-led projects and ideas. But with it, there is no end to our impact and influence. It's the secret to making all we do and who we be sustainable for the long haul. So one of the changes I have made with this new season was of hiring support, having support, helping edit, upload the podcast, get everything together to release this content to you. This has been a beautiful learning opportunity, and it's going to allow us to release way more free content to all of you. And with this expanding of the community and of the podcast and deciding not to do it just all on my own, I have an invitation for you. So if Rising Woman Leaders has been a source of spiritual nourishment in your life, if you believe in our mission, the content we create, and want to see this podcast thrive, we would love for you to become a patron on Patreon today. So what is Patreon? Patreon is a way to financially contribute to the continued growth of content creators like the Rising Woman Leaders podcast. So if you've received nourishment from this podcast, or you believe in our mission to share women's voices in devotion to the rising feminine, you can now pledge $1, $3, $5, $25 per episode. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/risingwomanleaders. That's patreon.com/risingwomanleaders. And you can just click on one of the rewards or click become a patron. And there are some really cool bonuses and gifts in there, like early release content, access to a private Facebook community, Patreon only content. And you'll only be charged when we release a new episode. So it's based around content creation. It's like giving a tip, a little nudge of encouragement, of your support, of acknowledging what this podcast has brought to your life. Your pledge supports us to continue creating regular free content and to fully devote ourselves to the mission of women rising in their unique brilliance. We are so grateful for the community that has been created through this podcast. The guests and the listeners of this show have opened our heart in ways beyond measure. We continually receive messages from our listeners telling us how this podcast has literally changed their life, helping them feel less alone, how the vulnerability and the openness of the stories that women share here have helped them to feel so much more empowered. We believe women thrive in community where their voices and their stories are heard. We do this work in devotion to the rising feminine, to allow the feminine to lead the way to reestablish balance in a new paradigm. We're supporting women to step into their sovereignty, rise in their feminine power, align with their autonomous, free, boundless spirit, thrive in a new paradigm where the divine feminine and the masculine coexist in unity. It is our desire for women to return to the unconditional love and guidance of their heart and their womb, to remember abundance consciousness and rest into a deep knowing that there is enough for all, and to embrace all of life, to feel our pain as a tool to reconnect and realign with our own innate divinity. So as we step into this new chapter of growing, I invite you to join us. If you believe in our mission, if you want to continue receiving more amazing content, if you want to get some awesome bonuses, I invite you to join our community on Patreon. Again, the link is just patreon.com/risingwomanleaders, and we'll also put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, for doing your work in the world, and for rising with us to support this impact, this mission in devotion to the rising feminine. I hope you enjoy today's show. I'm here today with Yaya Erin Rivera Merriman. She is a plant spirit medicine practitioner, ritualist, goddess scholar, mother, and artist. Best known as the director of Active Culture Family, Erin walks a path of community stewardship and service to Gaia through her roles as lead facilitator of the Medicine Mandala Green Magic Apprenticeship Program and as priestess of Bridge Temple, a remote off-grid mystery school, healing sanctuary, culture farm, and Library of Earth Magic located on sacred land in the Cleveland National Forest of San Diego, California. Welcome, Erin.
Hello.
So I want to tell you that I was listening to your podcast, the Starseed Survival Guide, which is awesome, really great. It's just, place for you to share about all of these things and challenges that we come up against with being awakening beings. In one of the episodes, you were talking about how fibromyalgia was actually part of your life. And I don't think you know this about me, but that was actually something that was diagnosed for me as well. When I was in
Mm.
college, I was living in New York City and had a pretty high stress lifestyle at that time. And there wasn't anyone really to tell me, hey, you might just be an ultra sensitive person and like picking up on all these energies. And, but I did happen to discover at that time that yoga was the one thing that really helped me discharge that energy and come back into my alignment and my center. So I would love to just hear from you about your path, how that in particular was part of your path, maybe even about being an empath and what you've been learning about all of that.
Thank you. It's something that I didn't speak about for years because, as anyone with chronic pain knows, it scares people to not be able to help you. And so when you go through life having something that's very imminent, that's part of the present moment, so you can't actually be present and connect with other people without being present with the level of pain you're in, and then you're kind of asked explicitly or implicitly by people to be present but not share about that thing. And so I think maybe that was the most crippling aspect of it, wasn't the pain, but the way that it isolated me from other people, because I couldn't be 100% open about my experience without provoking a kind of shutdown response from other people. So I think that I really do believe people are compassionate, but when it comes to chronic conditions, that's the definition of a chronic condition, is that we don't, as a culture, we don't know how to fix it, that it's enduring and we don't know what to do. So I think there's something about having a chronic illness that confronts people with how much we don't know about the universe and about wellness, and people don't like to feel that way. So I didn't have a lot of friends, and I didn't really even understand at the time how much of my social isolation and loneliness had to do with dynamics of my chronic condition. It was like kind of all I'd ever known coming into adulthood, is being like very uncomfortable in my body. So I think maybe I kind of assumed that everybody was really uncomfortable in their body, and I didn't understand like how they also seemed to be like having nice boyfriends in high school and like, I don't know, playing sports and going out dancing and seeming to enjoy life. Yeah. I minimized its role in my journey for a really long time. It was just kind of like in a box. Like, this is this thing, but I'm all these other things too. Or like, I have this thing, but it's not going to prevent me from being a wife or a mother or holding space for other people. You don't need to worry about that. And it's only been in the last few years, as all of my different explorations of healing and spirituality that were all driven by a very specific attempt to reduce the amount of pain that I was in. It was only in the past few years that all those different things actually started to alchemize into their own thing, that I started to become my own pain relieving medicine. And now I can speak about it. And now I can let it be a part of the initiations and experiences that shaped me without feeling like overwhelmed by it. And so I think because I'm not in a state of panic or overwhelm about it, it's other people are not as triggered by it either, and it's sort of become a non-issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you think back to that girl And if there was anything you could have told her or helped her or, guided her to, or the things that you are part of your life now that are just probably second nature, what would you maybe suggest to her,
Oh gosh.
want for her, or tell her, or
I was just having this conversation with someone yesterday where they were talking about how like all the things that we're doing in the year-long apprenticeship, like they're so basic in a way. She was speaking specifically about like touching your body, your own body in a loving way. And she was like, it feels so weird that like someone needed to tell me that even. And then as I think back on it, people have told me that before, but there's something about like really needing the context to drop all the way into having your own direct experience of something really subtle being like a turning point in your life. And so it's a hard question in a way, because if I think back to that 16-year-old or 23-year-old that were really trapped by life circumstance, painful life circumstances, or felt really trapped, that she knew, like, she kind of had all the tools, but like didn't know how to use them really, and so would kind of just rotate between all the tools in a panicky kind of way, and so I think there's different teachings for different people at different times, and like the teaching for me is one that I don't necessarily think is the teaching for a lot of other people, but and I've said it before, it's kind of like go to the movies more. Like that I was so desperate to heal myself and to grow and evolve and like be on my path and do the thing. I think I was like possessed with a sense of purpose from an early age, that I was like pushing really hard, and that was actually making it worse. And so a lot of things that people do, like go to yoga or get a massage or have a really nice meal, I was like, oh, I can't waste time on those things because like I'm in excruciating pain right now and I can't sleep, and I can't focus in school or whatever. But I didn't realize that like a lot of those self-care, like subtle, kind, like self-loving activities were actually the key to making all the other or like enabling all the other tools to actually work. So there's something about like it's really hard to tell someone who's in like acute long-term pain, to like take it easy, do just go for a walk on the beach. You're like, no, like I need help now, but like the walk on the beach is the help. The sense of exhale, and I guess that's maybe the hardest thing to do is surrender and relax and enjoy yourself in the midst of challenge. And the things that enable us to do that for me have seemed to change all the time. Like what enables me to do that changes from day to day, but that is the answer for me is like in those moments when it feels the scariest to surrender. Those are the moments where surrender is the most powerful of a tool.
Yes, and very brave. Yeah, because we're in a culture where everything is do, go, go, push. And I think of what you're speaking to is so much of the feminine, this new way of being that is emerging so strongly for so many women right now and men. It's something that's rising to the surface. Tell us more about your relationship to the feminine and how that comes through in your work and what you see for that now.
Well, I believe that idea that we all have masculine and feminine energies, maybe even equally available to us, but then we gravitate toward certain aspects of ourselves and identify more with certain aspects of ourselves. Sometimes by nature, that's just our comfort zone, but sometimes by nurture, where we embody certain aspects of ourselves, we get more positive feedback from the people in our immediate surroundings, like our family. And so certain aspects are cultivated more, and that becomes our identity, and our habitual identity and our gender identity and sexual identity all gets stirred into that process. So I look at myself as a evolutionary extension of my mother and father. So my inner masculine is just like my dad going to the next level of understanding, and my inner feminine is just my mom and everything that she experienced going to the next level of understanding. And then I can look at that pattern continue and say that my father's side of the family, really men and women, it really embodied a lot of qualities that are considered masculine in a lot of paradigms. They're very intellectual. They really liked to understand things with their mind and serve by doing. And my mother's side of the family was very embodied and emotional and experiential and not especially verbal. If they were going to say something, it was maybe just going to be like, I love you. And so I think that I've always felt pretty balanced and like available to both, and that my sister is the same way. Like, and when you're a woman who is available to embodying both your masculine and feminine side, that tends to stand out as like you're very masculine, or you're a very assertive woman, or those kind of things, and that we both have always been comfortable in, say, like, we're like a business meeting or whatever, that's all men. And it just feels like something that it's just volume knobs, and that I can turn it up when it's the right tool for the job to access my more masculine qualities. And I get a lot of maybe confidence out of being able to do that. I feel confident because I can do that. And so I feel I can go into more situations and know that I can shift my energies as needed to accomplish what I want to accomplish, or create what I want to create with who I want to be creating with. But in my being, I do feel female, and I feel like a woman, and I love being a woman. So it feels like a tool or a layer to use or climb into, but that I love that I get to put that. It's like a favorite dress. And it's like putting on my favorite dress when I really get to, I guess, when there's like the circumstances call for or allow for me to feel safe and comfortable, and when I feel like I'm being myself, like really being myself, I think it is a more fluid, non-linear, organic flow, and that feels feminine to me.
Yes. Yes. And I know this is a piece of what is integrated in your apprenticeship or this priestess program that you have, and bringing people on the land where you are. And I'd love to hear a little bit about your work and what it is that you are doing with people and teaching them and bringing them into.
Thank you. So I'm someone who's always needed to have a job or multiple jobs. And so maybe always saw work as a means to an end, where at some point maybe I would have enough because of how much I had worked in order to allow me to have more time and space in life for the things that really feed me, for just being and observing and studying and learning and sharing. And so through my periods where I really needed to work really hard to have enough to pay my basic bills, really being in the doing, I would push my body and my fibromyalgia to just the absolute limits and go within cycles of I can't do that. You can't abuse your body this way. You are going to die. You're going to die young if you try to live this way. And then periods of surrendering to well, I just need to eat and sleep and follow the little threads of magic. And because I'm so ill right now that I can't do anything else. And in those cycles of intelligence of my body, just saying nope, we're not going to allow you to walk that path of pushing and striving and accumulating. We're just going to revolt. And one of those periods of revolt followed the annual Spirit Weavers gathering that I've been a part of since the beginning. And so I think it was the first year in Mendocino. So we were in the Redwoods, and there's always so much you can choose from there, but there was a heavy ancestral component to the things I ended up choosing this particular year. And I came home and I just couldn't even be inside. I just had this deep understanding of the way that both sides of my family have been embodying this kind of forest medicine and stewarding this medicine of really lush ecosystems for all of time, and how my parents' particular wounds and challenges, I just saw them through this new lens of because they you can't be forest medicine and live go and sit in a cubicle every day and sit in a van that commutes everyone from your small town to the city to work every day. You can't be well. And so I just got home. I couldn't be indoors. I had been doing my circles and my classes in my living room, and it just felt ridiculous. I was wow, the amount of wasted effort that we're all doing to bring nature inside. I can't do it. I can't do it even maybe one more time. We need to go outside and we need to do this outside. And as soon as I got really clear on that, I also realized that there was a woman who had been come to my farm, come do this on my farm, come hang out on my farm anytime you want, for maybe 2 years. And I had never been. I was just oh, great. That's so sweet of her. She's so open to this work. But as soon as I got really clear on what the problem was, what the underlying dynamic of everything, every woman that comes for a session, every woman that came for a workshop, every urge that I had, every communication from my body, everything my parents seemed to not be able to figure out, that it was all just embodied in this one truth that we're supposed to be outside a lot more of the time. Then I kind of cleared my schedule, dropped everything, made an appointment to go out and meet this woman and see her farm. And the minute that I got there, it was just sort of magnetic, heart to the ground, face down on the ground. I don't want to leave ever. This is the spot. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend that's a poet, Eve Bradford that has some kind of a poem about these times that's this like passionate directive that's like find the last place, something around like what was the last place that you felt alive, go there and start creating now, like in this sort of sense of urgency that some of us feel, or like no time to waste, that stop waiting for it to be perfect or it to belong to you even. Just identify that last place where you felt alive with a sense of potential and imbued with the magic of the natural world, and just go there and do what you can, whatever that is. And so that ended up birthing this program that at the heart of it, it's a way to bring women to the land that need the kind of healing and need the medicine that exists in this particular little tiny patch of earth. It was sacred land. It was stewarded by Kumaye before it passed into the family that owns it now, and they don't say that they own it. They're stewards, and it's their family's desire to just keep this piece of land as wild as possible, and because they also can feel it. So it's like everyone can feel it. There's magic there, and I just feel honored to be allowed to co-create with that, and use my artist path to sort of make a structure that enables people to interact with this natural phenomena.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. I have a few questions. One, I'm just curious, what kind of changes have you seen in some of these women, from the beginning to the end?
Well, one of my main instructions from spirit, from goddess, from the spirit of the land, was to, if I was going to make any kind of effort, that I could make effort to ensure variety in the group. So people are coming from a really incredibly diverse set of life circumstances. And so what each person needs to not grow, but evolve, like not make that like natural organic growth step, but make that like evolutionary leap out of like their karmic limitations, and familial worldview, is different. But I feel that if I look at the whole group so far, we're about halfway through this year, it feels like that exhale has happened. That is this collective exhale that says, you know what? I'm just going to be myself. And I think that might be enough. And I think that might actually be like really powerful medicine for the other people in my life and for me, and like the sense of like I'm my own medicine, like letting myself be myself. It can heal joint pain, can heal heartbreak, can heal dysfunctional relationship patterns, can heal addiction. So there's, I guess the word trust is coming up, which is funny because I've been sort of like trying to not use that word. I guess in relation to trusting other people, but it's like, well, the only trust that you need to have is trusting yourself. Yeah. And so maybe there's a sense of like wonderment or that little twinkle of magic and curiosity and potential is increasing as people relax into the process of exploring the unknown together, like a little family exploring the unknown together, but that sort of trusts, like, I think whatever happens, we're going to be okay. And like, we might have the tools. I might not have all the tools, but between all of us, we might have the tools to take care of whatever comes up. So like the excitement for the journey grows as the fear of like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What is this part of me too much? Is this part of me like gonna be accepted? Or as that starts to just exhale out into the earth.
Yeah. We each have this unique set of divine qualities, and every single person cannot be replicated. And actually, this journey is so much just being that, and being those divine qualities, aligning more and more with those qualities that are you, and being yourself. I love that permission and that discovery, because I think a lot of times we are going for something outside, but just becoming more and more of who we are is so much simpler.
Yeah, and there's something about the process of allowing that to happen in community where like it can be more of a pressure cooker at first, like stepping into community to feel like, am I going to be accepted? Am I going to be seen? Am I going to be allowed to belong? Is this my group? And then it's sort of like the minute that you start to think, okay, yeah, I think I can relax and be myself here, then there's a whole nother level of work to be done around like, well, I've always been the plant weirdo. I've always been like the weirdo that wants to talk to the plants. And then like, what does it mean that I'm in a group of 20 weirdos who want to talk to the plants? Like, so it's like, oh, I'm not going to be accepted. And then, oh, I'm not special is kind of like the next challenge that comes up there. And those feelings are really real and can be really painful and kind of drive a lot of unconscious patterns in groups that can kind of like deteriorate the health of a group. And so it's like there just has to be so much consciousness in the process, and so much like compassion for ourselves and compassion for each other, and say, yep, that's just part of it. Like you're on phase 1 of the like community integration project. Now you're on phase 2. That's totally part of it. Don't worry. Like phase 3 is gonna feel so much lighter now and forever when you fully addressed those issues within yourself. And it's part of it. It's part of it. Don't run away. It's part of it.
It's part of the growth. We can shine even in a group of people that feels like everyone is shining, or everyone has the things that are maybe similar to what we have. And
that similar is not the same. And that is like an inalienable truth, that like no one has your exact flavor and frequency.
Yes. I see this come up in just the entrepreneur world, and, women in starting their businesses and then looking out and comparing themselves to everyone else that's around them. And that can be a real challenge. But I think starting a business that's in a realm of personal growth is really personal growth for yourself, and to look at all of that and embrace all of that. And the piece I've been working with is shifting the mindset into a state of abundance. Like I don't need to be in this lack or comparison, but rather remembering the truth that there is enough for all. There is this state of abundance, even if someone is doing something similar to me or has similar qualities to me. It's like, yeah, there's enough for both of us.
Yeah, that like Spirit wouldn't have made 2 people to carry a similar mission unless it was too big of a mission for one person to carry. So like the shift for me has been like, if there's people who are doing things, it's not so much, my trigger is not so much when people are doing things that are similar to me, because like if I'm jamming in my thing, I'm just like enjoying that so much that like I might not even notice, or I just might be like, cool, let's jam together. But if there's a part of myself that I have yet to have time and space to really explore, but that's really important to me. So I see it as part of me, but other people don't see it as part of me because I haven't embodied and expressed it yet. And then I see a lot of other people like embodying and expressing that thing really well. It can make me go, oh, well, like there's no room at that table for me to also embody, or there's no point for me to also embody that thing. And I don't want to like waste time and energy. And if that's not needed from me, then I guess I won't go there. But sometimes it was a really authentic part of me that needed expression. And then it kind of is, it's like a little girl in me that's sort of like crying over in the corner, you know, that's like, oh, I wanted to do that. And Erin's not letting me because she's making this intellectual assessment that like, it's not needed.
So silly.
Yeah.
I can totally relate. I have just a funny, like a small example of this. So I live in Northern California. There's a lot of, esoteric kinds of practices going on up here. And I recently got really interested in sound healing. And immediately my mind was like, oh, well, there's so many people doing that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And it was just like, no, there's something in me that's like, I want a crystal singing bowl. Like, I want to explore this. I want to use my voice in a bigger way and see what's here for me. So just like stepping slowly into that permission, it's an edge, but it's beautiful when we can really give ourselves that.
I think I've spoken about it before, so I'm like, well, I don't know how much I've already talked about this, and I hope I don't sound like a broken record, but I guess I think it's really important, like what you just described around, like, well, in this area, there are a lot of sound healers, and then like, but like, I'm called to this tool, and I like the look on your face when you were talking about it, it was like innocence and wonderment and magic and joy, and so this part of you, this instinctual part of you is just like, I don't know, this makes me happy. And that I think anybody that grew up with actual sisters can identify this dynamic a little bit quicker, where we kind of just do a thing where like it's an old way of women respecting each other, is to say, well, you know, like my sister was a dancer and I was a singer. So at some point I stopped dancing and she stopped singing. And the reason I stopped dancing was because the teachers picked on me. And the reason she stopped singing was because she felt that my voice was better than hers. And probably not just my voice. She just decided there are people whose voices are better than mine. So I would rather do something that like I could excel at and like have mastery in than something I'm just okay at. But then they become these identities where it's like a unspoken way of respecting people, like sisters, to say, okay, well, your thing is cooking, so I love to cook and I teach about cooking, but I'm not gonna like make it my thing. I'm gonna let it like be your thing, and it'll be like something I do. But then the unspoken rule when we do that without actually having a verbal agreement or conversation about it is then that they will also identify whatever our main thing is, and that they'll kind of stay away from that, or you know, from like making that part of their brand or their business identity. And so then when they like buy a crystal bowl or something and we see it on them playing it on Instagram, and we feel that chemical thing go through our body and we don't know why, and we call it jealousy, or we call it whatever things are, like, oh, I don't know why, but that just makes me so uncomfortable. And it's because we made a little like agreement with the universe, and that wasn't serving ourselves. And then when other people didn't like uphold it, we actually feel kind of betrayed. And it's like all of these subtle agreements about how to allow other people to have their realm of mastery or their queendom, and how to not step on each other's toes or like cross boundaries, and where are the boundaries. Like, I think that we've exhausted that way of doing this, and that's why everybody is feeling so many feelings around these kind of things when they try to step into sisterhood or community, is just that we're getting the feedback that we can't actually grow and evolve any further. Like, we've set a limitation that is now like injuring our expansion into our multidimensional nature and our mastery and our like freedom to explore, and just like be.
Yes. And so looking at those places where we may have made some kind of unconscious agreement or contract and letting that go sounds like a way to move forward.
Yeah. And like, just, I think for me, I guess basically circling back to what you're saying, this idea of like having some kind of like mantra of abundance or practice of abundance, or for me, it's always like the plants and certain goddesses. So having a goddess that I could connect with, or a plant that actually would help me have an embodied experience of the abundance, that it's pretty hard to do intellectually. Just say, there is enough, there's room at the table for everyone, there's enough. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of plants that are kind of eager to help us feel that exhale and expansion into the truth that there's enough for as many people at the table of sound healing or movement or nutrition, because we can look at the world and say, are people healed? Are people hearing the cosmic song? Are people thriving and vibrant in their bodies? People moving joyfully, dancing through their day and to the grocery store? No. So the job's not done, and we need more people on the team.
It's so true. Oh, well, I'd love to hear about your experience with plants, and in particular, if you want to start with just sharing what would be some plants to have an embodied experience of abundance.
Well, I really believe in the idea that we embody as part of a multidimensional family, with some of that family in the world of form and some of that family agreeing to hold it down on the other side for us. And so we might have pets or familiars, and then we might have animal totems, and then we might have things that we like to grow in our garden or that we like to eat, and then we might have plant spirits that maybe they don't grow around us, or you can't eat them. Something like datura that like it's poisonous. But and so I would start off by saying that I believe the plant that would be most available for helping introduce someone to that frequency or anchor them to the frequency of abundance would be different for everyone. And so if you have a favorite plant like kale, and you just eat like 3 heads of kale every day, then that would be a really great place to start, with sitting with the kale plant and saying like, we love each other, right? We really get each other. And you seem to be anchored into a frequency of abundance. Could you share with me something about abundance? And just listen. But then listening and being present is hard for a lot of us. So I think sometimes we need like a proxy or a midwife, even to have that experience of listening to a plant that we know and trust really well. And there are plants that are really good at that. And I would say plants like Damiana and Kava and I guess those two. There was another one sort of poking its head in. We'll see if they come back. But plants that help you slow down time and drop into your body and I think both of those plants make a little bit of space between your thoughts. And so when we sit to listen to a plant teacher, a lot of times at first people will say like, well, I'm not sure if what just happened was just my imagination or like my thoughts. And so when you slow down your thoughts and you actually have space in between them for something else to emerge, that's generally when we trust the communication. so our minds can pick up like the stories and the communications, but then it just feels like part of the flow of our regular mind chatter. So there has to be like a body component where we feel different in our body, our thoughts are coming slower, and then there's something else moving between the thoughts, and that's when we're like, the plant told me this. And that happened. So whether or not I believe in plant communication doesn't matter, because that just happened. Yeah.
Well, I know you mentioned about Kava. I wonder if you could tell us more about that plant and your experience with it and what you use it for.
Thank you. I have a really deep relationship with Kava, and it's hard for me to see it, like, or taste the flavor or describe the frequency. I kind of will say, like, it's hard to taste your own medicine, or like it's hard to see, like, really see yourself. I find I question my relationship to Kava more than other plants, because other plants maybe like come with more of a sense of a distinct personality that's like easy to like study because it's something different. So I'm like, oh, there's definitely the presence of something else here, and let me like draw it and take notes about it and write stories about it. But with Kava, like, I don't necessarily feel her presence, because I feel that her dharma and my dharma are like completely merged, and so I just might feel like I'm sharing something that I just made up that I want to share. And then when I serve Kava to groups and people consistently have those same revelations or use those same words, then I start to notice, oh, this is actually like from the Kava, or part of the Kava, or something that I share with the Kava. So it's like a long, slow, my relationship to Kava is a long, slow journey of respecting myself and loving myself and honoring myself, really.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of what you're describing is so experiential and such an embodiment. It's almost like, I mean, it feels like there's just many layers, like going layers of connecting to the actual spirit of the plant. I mean, very different from someone who might just, try a plant and not think twice about it.
Yeah, and like I can speak to those realms. So like, I could say Kava is really well celebrated for her abilities to bring us into a state of relaxed mental clarity. That's something that most people will experience when they have Kava, if they're not expecting to experience a high. If people are expecting to experience a high, then the most common thing to say is, I didn't feel anything. But if you're not coming from that expectation, then people will mostly say, like, relaxed mental clarity is a good bet for something you might experience. And then Kava is a smooth muscle relaxant, so there are so many capabilities and potentials for people who are experiencing a lot of tension, or things like menstrual cramps where your uterus is a smooth muscle. There's just a whole wide world of exploration there. But I find that, at least with me, Kava is most, she's like, yeah, I might do those things for you, or yeah, I'm down, sure, that's easy for me. But she feels most stoked about communication and community. So really helping people to up-level their communication abilities so that we can be healthy in community.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. And I've only had a few experiences with it, but I can totally see how it brought me into deeper connection with the people I was with and being able to communicate clearly. And I remember there being a lot of laughter, actually, the times I have had it.
See, that's just lovely, because my sense is that like sometimes people might even be like, well, I'm mad and I don't want to have Kava because then I'm just going to like not be mad. Then I'll just like be high instead or something like, and so there's like in the beginning of the exploration, there can be a distrust of the state that of connection is like, well, is it actual connection, or does she just give us like the illusion of connection? And does it matter? Like if everyone's having sharing an illusion that we're all connected in our hearts, and living and making choices under an illusion that we're all connected, does it matter? So that's like, but that period of distrust of like, are we actually connected, or is it an illusion of connection, is real for a lot of people. And when I go to the plant and I ask her about it, she says, does it matter? She says, just sit with that. Maybe it matters. Maybe it doesn't. I'm not going to tell you. It's like a koan. She's the teacher. And that's the koan. It's like, does it really matter? Life's but a dream. We live in a multiverse. Like everything is an illusion in a way. So if everything's an illusion and everything's a dream, wouldn't you rather it be a good dream where we're all connected in our hearts? And then my own personal experience of sitting with that koan is that I do believe that it's real, and kind of draws on my dream teachings from one of my teachers, Robert Moss, where he says like your dreams aren't as real as this reality. They're more real. They're more real what you experience there than this dense form. And so the way that you experienced yourself when sharing Kava in community, you're like, oh, I remember there was a lot of laughter. That's a truer version of you. And that's a truer version of that group, from my perspective. And so it's the blessing or the gift or the medicine is to have reality revealed, and then you can see why, you can study and observe more, maybe what's in the way day to day, and you can work on those things and say, well, we now know what it could feel like if I didn't have all this junk in the way. And if I chose my words with a little more precision to be closer to what I actually was trying to express, if I was breathing more, if I let other people speak more, all the things that naturally happen when we have Kava. So she teaches us what it looks like to just be better communicators, and then we get to feel why that's important. And then we start to like commit to that path to say, oh, you know what? I want to do this. I want to live this because it feels so much better. And then the work begins.
Yes. Wow. Thank you for that perspective on all of that. I just want to ask you a couple more questions, but one of them, I was curious to hear your definition of both a starseed and a priestess, because I think there are many, different interpretations, and I'd love to hear.
And I'm glad you asked, because I do feel like there's a lot of words that are misunderstood or just come bundled with a lot of old ideas of what they have meant in the past, and that both I feel a sense of being charged with using certain words that trigger people. Like I feel like it's part of my assignment is like I am fully aware that the word starseed can make people question the validity or groundedness or relevance of my work. And the same with priestess. And I remember the first time I heard the word priestess, one of my elder teachers was saying, well, you're a priestess, so you're going to have to XYZ. And I remember this weird mix of ego, like grabbing at it and being like, I'm a thing, there's a thing. And then like disgust of being like, is that like a princess? Like, and so I think maybe I can infer that I'm not the only one that would have a combination of like grasping for a title and then kind of like, oh God, like, do I have to wear a purple velvet gown and like a little jeweled headpiece? And maybe, maybe maybe those are your ritual garments and you do have to wear them. But I would say the term starseed always resonated with me from the first time I heard it, maybe in my late teens. And I definitely navigate on the basis of resonance in terms of trying to determine what's true. So before knowing anything about it, I felt in an embodied sense that like something real is being referred to here, and something that my body is a yes to. It's like smelling something when you're hungry and you're like, I'm gonna bite into that. I want that's gonna be good for me. And so at that time, I probably did some online research, and I learned about like Pleiadian starseeds and learned a couple little facts, like little things like starseeds dislike humidity. And, then I would go to Puerto Rico where it's very humid and like not be able to move, like not be able to get up out of bed the entire time. And so feel validated in some of these little like particularities about me that someone is saying exist under an umbrella, and that bundle of qualities has a name. And then as I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot more feedback from other people that are just like, you're so alien. You're so alien. You are not from here. You are not from here. And it used to really hurt my feelings because I would just be like, I'm doing the exact same thing you're doing. I'm trying to share love. I'm trying to give and receive love. And that's it. And I think we're even doing it the same way. So what are you talking about? But as I have deepened my path with healing, I think it began with experiences I would have while receiving healing work from other people, like the visuals and the dreams that I would have afterward. And then where the plants take me. Like I think everybody that is interested in plants, the plants show them different things and take them different places. And they do just speak to me a lot about our cosmic origins and the nonlinear nature of time and the different worlds of formless realities and different classes of beings. And so I've started to look at the idea of Pleiadian starseeds, Arcturian starseeds, Orion starseeds, Lyran starseeds, just as another set of archetypes that we can look at, like the tarot, and say, like, do we resonate more with the Empress or the High Priestess or the Queen of Pentacles as these different archetypes for embodying feminine, divine feminine energy? That there are these patterns in the universe. And so some people call them myths or archetypes. And then I think myths and archetypes are alive. And so they're goddesses. They're what we're referring to when religions talk about goddesses. It's a different way of languaging these energy patterns. And that the having visibility into the starseed archetypes or energy patterns or fields of consciousness greatly benefits my life. So I could say they're fields of consciousness, or I could look at it from a super like scientific way. And I received a song recently about ancestors that was sort of about forgiving your ancestors, and the lyrics were, we did our best. I mean, we came here as a spore on a meteor from a distant star. I know it doesn't always feel that way, but we've come so far. And so there's an idea of like, if you want to believe that like these star civilizations are as tactile as our own, then how did we get from there to here? As DNA on fungus, on fractures of meteors and stardust that like was able to make it through the heat of the sun and the atmosphere and onto our planet to be cultivated in the petri dish of the primordial ocean and evolve extremely slowly over time, also with the help of fungi. So that's the spectrum of my understanding of starseeds. And if you're Pleiadian, that tends to be like maybe androgyny and gender fluidity and alternate relationship paradigms, all anchored in evolutionary heart-centered energy. Those are some things I associate with Pleiadian starseeds and what they're here to help us evolve through. And Lyran starseeds, from my perspective, like create everything with sound and vibration, and are really masterful in creating kind of reweaving that fabric of reality, and so master healers, because you can change the structure of the energy body with sound and frequency and visualization and intention, and so sacred geometry and creating out of sacred geometries and really understanding the abstracts of structure and flow. I feel like those are Lyran starseeds. Arcturian starseeds are thought to be masters of the emotions, like this sort of like combining the heart, mind, bodhicitta, like different relationship to emotional mastery. Yeah. And then a priestess to me is just a servant of the divine. So if you're a priestess of the plants, then your devotion to the plants comes first. And a priestess is not a householder. A priestess is monastic, that is maybe not always seen as a monastic because they don't shave their head or wear a uniform, because that might not be dictated by their tradition. So a tantric priestess has a devotional goddess worship practice, and that comes first, and it comes before kids, and it comes before a husband, and it comes before a job, and everything has to orient around that. So it's like you might have a goddess worship practice, but it might not come first. It might be a hobby, or it might be 50-50. And a priestess is really someone that's like, I'm here to do this. I'm devoted to this, and I belong to this, and I'm going to embody this, and or else I don't want to even be here. Like I'm going to become so ill and disenchanted if I can't do that I won't even want to be here. So there's like a level of like commitment, I guess, that I see in it. And so you could be a priestess of the heart or a priestess of nourishment. I tend to talk about it more in terms of like something a little more specific, like when you initiate into a lineage and you make certain like concrete commitments to tending the thing that you exist in devotion to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and in this modern age too, I'm seeing that, yes, the priority of the devotion and the practices, and I feel like in some people I'm seeing, can have a family and still like holding that as their anchor. What do you think about that?
I mean, I try to do it all, and that's why Tantra is the only path that can really hold and educate and steward me and help me be well, because it is the non-dual path, and it is the path where you don't like, it's not really necessary or indicated to go into an ashram because it's, or like have those kinds of austerities, because it's not a path of renunciation. It's not a path where you renounce the world and touching money and having a family and going to the doctor and stuff like that. It's really a path of like vigor, where you're connecting with the energies, these really powerful energies, and there's a sense of like, well, why do you need that much power in one place? And it's like, because I'm trying to be in the world. I'm trying to do that like monastic cave thing, being in connection to God in every moment while being a mother and having to market a workshop online. Like the spectrum of things that I'm experiences that I'm allowing into my world, while also being committed to like being a servant of spirit and that coming first, is so vast and intense that you really, I believe, like there's certain energies you go to when you make that choice. Like, okay, I'm gonna like be in the world and be a priestess. That it's like, okay, Tantra, because that's the only thing that can weave together such a broad spectrum of things under the banner of my yes.
Yes. And that's when we really need our practices to like say yes to so much and to be in the world and to be in that devotion and to be so many different roles for so many different people. It's like, yeah, we really need to stay anchored with ourselves and with our connection to spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's no joke, but it is possible. You don't have to choose between your spiritual path and having a family or having a thriving business or having your health. But you're going to need some big time support if that's your path to do both.
Yes. This winter, I actually spent 3 weeks in India, and I was with Amma, the hugging guru, and my first few days, I was really questioning her abilities to be giving that much, like to be on stage and hugging that many people. And then I had a realization about halfway through, because I was like, whoa, she's really not like, is she not taking care of herself? Can I really like, bow down at the feet of the guru who's someone who maybe she's not taking care of herself? Yeah. But I realized that like the insight I had is that she's plugged in to such a greater source, and that is not her, like solely her love or her doing this work. It's like something so much bigger she's just a vehicle for it.
I think that's an important dynamic to think about, because I don't know. I'm not in her skin. I don't know. But I would imagine that at some point, even if it was when she was like 5 or 10, she figured that out, like how to not be giving it like from her own like adrenal resources, and how to just plug in and just run it through and be maybe even fed in the process, and energized, as a, I don't know, exchange for giving her vessel to that level of exchange, that there is something that you get out of it. So the idea that like your life might be like a sacrifice as a priestess, that's kind of part of the old way of looking at it. And I think that maybe it used to be that way, but that like consciousness has evolved to the point where I think we sort of collectively understand, like, you don't have to sacrifice yourself to hugging all those people. You can just plug into something else. But then also, I see a lot of healers who are maybe like in their 60s or 70s, and they are just on fire. They're plugged in, they're on purpose, and they could do a 10-hour talk to like 200 people for 10 days. And I do believe that we have different kind of rhythms and that everyone has a limit, like, and their physical body. And so even being plugged in, or having that like tejas, or like soul purpose, soul fire that feeds you and gives you more energy, that it still does kind of slowly burn out the body in a way where I feel like when that rhythm of being on, hugging all those people or whatever, doing your 5-day workshop, when that's over, I really role model a process or a cycle of like if you're gonna go really big in that way, then you have to like go really hard on the self-care to like balance it out. Like if you teach for 3 days, you should sleep for 3 days afterward. Like, so I think that's kind of one of my main practices or commitments at this point, is like even when you're on purpose, even when you're plugged in, even when you're sourcing something else and everyone can see it and you're like, wow, okay, like you're on fire, you like to crawl into a hole and die afterward, and like dream and drink tea and
Renew
like
yourself.
do absolutely nothing, stare at the wall. Yeah. So yeah, renewal is a wonderful word, and I like the word regeneration too, in terms of like what I'm trying to talk about here is like regeneration includes death, and a regenerative culture includes like a great reverence for all of those phases of like, and now I'm going to fall over, and now I'm going to stare at the wall, and now I'm going to like even like be a little depressed or something. Like you're like, oh, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to move. I feel a little sad. Like feel your feelings. Like let yourself die. Let yourself be primordial ooze and goo and float in the void. And until that spark is genuine again. And then, you know, like you're going to show up all the way, like when it's time.
That's so important. I totally agree. Well, I feel like I could, go on talking and ask many more questions, but I want to be mindful of time. And I wondered if you want to share just anything about what's coming up in your business, things you're excited about for the people listening, how they can stay in touch with you, all of that.
Well, I've really kind of refined the various things I do to be able to share them in a deeper way with the year-long apprentices. So a lot of the individual sessions and more podcasts and things, it's kind of all collapsing into this program. So I'm really excited that probably next month I'll be opening scholarships for the Medicine Mandala Green Magic Apprenticeship. And then probably in April, I will open registration for a new group to step into the spiral of elemental healing and magic and evolution here that's happening here at Elder Farm. So I think that's the thing I'm really devoted to and most focused on, is just the continued deepening and strengthening of that container to be a really solid, dependable initiatory process for women.
I can feel it. I can feel the power of it. It's really beautiful work.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, do you have any closing words for us? And then I'll end this call with a prayer.
I suppose I should do the thing of telling people where they can find out about that. So my website is called Active Culture Family, and I'm pretty active on Instagram under the same name, Active Culture Family. So if you're interested in anything that we shared about today, say hello. I love to talk.
Yeah, we'll include the links too in the post.
Awesome.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your light with us and doing your work in the world. It's been a joy to get to know you better.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Let's just take a moment to center back in, to feel our body and our breath. Just tuning into all the people out there who will be listening, reopening and their heart. Invite everyone listening to just whatever, any little piece, any little gem that stayed with you from this episode, anything you want to take with you and integrate into your life, just bring that into your heart. Breathe it in and out. So may we all just continue to walk on our path with integrity, with alignment, with trust, with believing in ourselves, and using all of the allies that we can, the plants, the earth, nature, connection to the divine, all of our tools and practices to be those allies for us to continue to shine at our brightest. So I'll bow with gratitude. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Erin, for your wisdom. Namaste. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.